What if the person you cannot forget was never meant to arrive and make your life easier right away, but to break something open inside you first? What if the connection that felt confusing, intense, even painful, was not a mistake at all? Listen closely because most people miss this. They think real love should feel safe from the first moment. Soft, clear, simple. They think if two people are truly meant to be together, everything should fall into place fast. No distance, no silence, no doubt. But that is not how deep connection usually begins. It starts with a shift you cannot explain. A feeling that reaches you before your mind can label it. It unsettles you. It stirs old emotions. It shows you parts of yourself you have kept buried for years. And that is the sign. Not instant comfort, not easy timing, not perfect harmony. The one thing that always happens when two people are deeply meant to change each other is disruption before union. First, the connection shakes you. Then it separates you. Then it begins to remake you from the inside. Stay with me, because what comes next may explain a connection you still carry in your heart. And if you have ever met someone who seemed to wake up your soul and disturb your peace at the same time, then you already know this is not ordinary. Most people are taught to believe that destiny should feel beautiful from the start. A smile, a spark, a perfect story. They imagine two people meeting and simply knowing. No confusion, no emotional storms, no inner conflict. Just warmth, certainty, and the sweet feeling that life has finally given them what they were missing. But real connection is rarely that gentle. Real connection often enters your life like a quiet storm. It does not always bring peace first. It brings awareness. It brings friction. It presses against your hidden wounds and your carefully built illusions until something inside you can no longer stay asleep. When two people are truly meant to share a meaningful path, life does not always move them closer right away. Many times it does the opposite. It places space between them. It delays the timing. It forces each person to stand alone and face what they have been avoiding. That is not cruelty. That is preparation. The connection does not fail because there is distance. The distance becomes part of the connection. It reveals what each person still needs to learn. It breaks fantasy. It removes the version of love built on fear, chasing, pleasing, and emotional hunger. And if you have ever wondered why a bond can feel so strong and still not become stable right away, this is why. Some connections are not sent to comfort you first. They are sent to change you first. That is a hard truth. But it is also a freeing one. The first sign is not always peace. The first sign is recognition. You meet someone, and something in you responds before your thoughts can keep up. It may not feel calm. It may not feel easy. It may not even feel safe at first. And yet, there is a strange sense that this person sees more than most people do. They notice the parts of you that usually stay hidden. They touch something deep, something old, something unfinished. That can feel beautiful, but it can also feel threatening. Because being truly seen is not always soothing. Sometimes it is exposing. Sometimes it makes you aware of your fear, your shame, your longing, your need to be loved without losing yourself. This is why meaningful connections often feel intense instead of simple. They bring truth before comfort. They bring reflection before closeness. They do not only show you who the other person is, they show you who you are around love, around vulnerability, around uncertainty. Stay with this part because it matters. The discomfort does not always mean the person is wrong for you. Sometimes it means they are reflecting back the very parts of you that have waited the longest to be healed. They stir your patterns. They reveal your defenses. They force you to notice how you protect yourself, how you chase reassurance, how you fear being left, how you confuse emotional intensity with emotional safety. That is why the connection feels bigger than logic. It is not just attraction. It is exposure. It is a mirror. This is also why people who are deeply meant to affect each other often do not stay together in the beginning. Life separates them early. Timing collapses. Fear rises. One person may still be carrying old pain that has never been healed. One may still be afraid of real vulnerability. One may not yet know their own value. One may still be loving from a place of lack instead of inner fullness. And sometimes both people are unfinished in ways they cannot yet see. Even with good intentions, unfinished people can wound each other deeply. So life creates distance. It says, not yet. It knows that if they come together too soon, they may damage something that could later become honest, deep, and real. That separation hurts in a very specific way. It is not just heartbreak, it is disorientation. You do not only miss the person, you feel as if a hidden direction inside you has gone silent. You feel pulled inward. You feel forced to question yourself. And that is where the work begins. You start seeing your fear of abandonment. You see your need for validation. You notice how often you overgive just to keep people close. You begin to understand how much of your emotional life has been built around survival instead of truth. None of this is comfortable, but it is necessary. The pain is not sent to destroy you. It is sent to wake you up. And if this feels familiar, then you already know that some absences speak louder than presence ever did. Something quiet begins to happen after the separation. Even without contact, even in silence, the connection keeps moving within you. Logic may tell you to move on. Friends may tell you to forget. Life may look normal on the outside. But inside, something is shifting. You become more aware of yourself. You become more honest about what drains you and what nourishes you. The things you used to accept no longer feel right. The people you once chased do not hold the same power. The attention you used to crave begins to feel empty. Little by little, you stop wanting surface-level comfort and start craving depth, truth, calm, and mutual effort. Many times, you do not even realize that this growth started the moment that person entered your life. They acted like a trigger. They started a deeper process. A real, soul-level connection does not create endless obsession when it is understood properly. It creates reflection. Yes, you may think of them. Yes, they may stay on your mind in quiet ways. But the deeper movement is this. You start thinking about your life, your habits, your standards, your wounds, your choices. You begin asking better questions. Why do I love the way I do? Why do I fear closeness and crave it at the same time? Why do I settle for less than I deserve? Why do I call confusion love? These questions change you slowly, and that is how you know the connection carried meaning. It did not only pull emotion out of you, it called you into maturity. Keep listening, because this is where most people either grow or repeat the same cycle again. Over time, the impact becomes impossible to ignore. The person may no longer be beside you, but the way they affected you remains. They change how you see love. They change how you see yourself. They raise your standards, not only for who you allow into your life, but for the way you show up in your own life. You stop chasing people who cannot meet you with honesty. You stop ignoring red flags just to feel chosen. You stop confusing longing with alignment. You start valuing peace over intensity, truth over fantasy, and consistency over mixed signals. This kind of growth can feel quiet, but it is powerful. And this is important. Not every connection that changes you is meant to become permanent in its original form. Some people enter your life to awaken you, not to stay the way you expected. Sometimes their role is to shake loose what has been stuck in you for years. Sometimes their role is to redirect you. Sometimes they leave because the version of you that met them is not the version of you that can yet sustain real love. Whether they return is not always the main point. The deeper purpose may be the transformation itself. That is hard for the ego to accept. The ego wants a clear ending, a guaranteed outcome, a neat reward for all the pain. But life is often working on a deeper level. It is not always asking, will this person stay? Sometimes it is asking, who are you becoming because this happened? And the answer to that question can change everything. If you feel this in your chest, then you understand that some connections are not measured by duration, but by what they awaken. This is why such a connection can feel impossible to replace. People try. They meet someone new. They go out more. They distract themselves with routine, conversation, work, noise, and new beginnings. Sometimes it even seems like they have moved on. They laugh again. They function again. They build something that looks stable on the outside. But deep down there is still a subtle emptiness, not because the new people are bad, not because life is against them, but because the original connection touched a different layer. It reached deeper, it challenged the soul, not just the emotions. A connection like this is not only about chemistry, attraction, or timing. It is about evolution. It forces honesty. It makes you face the places where you have been living half awake. It exposes the patterns you learned long before you knew what love was. One person may need to learn boundaries, how to stop saying yes when their spirit is saying no, how to stop giving more than they receive. The other may need to learn accountability, how silence hurts, how avoidance creates damage, how love asks for courage, not disappearance. One person learns self-respect. The other learns emotional responsibility. One learns how to stop chasing. The other learns how to stop running. Both are being shaped, often in ways they cannot fully see while it is happening. And that hidden shaping is part of the design. If everything were obvious too soon, growth would stop. The unknown creates the space where change becomes possible. So if life pulled you apart from someone who felt deeply important, do not assume nothing was happening. A great deal may have been happening beneath the surface. Before any true reunion can happen, illusions must fall. This part is painful because many of the beliefs people carry about love sound romantic but are actually destructive. Beliefs like love should never be hard. Beliefs like if someone truly cares, they will never leave. Beliefs like suffering proves depth. Beliefs like another person is supposed to complete you. These ideas feel comforting at first, but they create dependence, fear, and impossible expectations. So, life begins stripping them away, slowly, sometimes harshly, through silence, through distance, through disappointment, through the long nights when you sit alone with your own thoughts and cannot run from yourself anymore. You start seeing your old patterns clearly. You see where you abandoned yourself just to keep a connection alive. You see where you accepted uncertainty and called it passion. You see where you made another person the center of your worth. This is where a deep shift begins. You learn that love is not meant to rescue you from yourself. You learn that no one can fill spaces inside you that you have refused to heal. You learn that wholeness is not something another person hands to you. It is something you build within. And once that truth starts settling into your body, something changes. You stop needing a specific outcome in order to feel okay. You stop checking for signs every hour. You stop waiting for one message to save your life. That does not mean you become cold. It means you become grounded. It means love stops being a survival tool and becomes a conscious choice. And that is when alignment begins to move again. If people like this meet again after growth, the feeling is different. It is quieter, stronger, less dramatic. There is less fear in the body, less noise in the mind, less ego trying to win, impress, protect, or test. What appears instead is honesty, not forced honesty, natural honesty, the kind that does not need games, decoding, or constant reassurance. The connection feels calmer because both people have already been through their own private chaos. It feels deeper because they have looked inward and faced their own shadows. It feels clearer because fantasy has already been broken. There is more respect in the silence, more care in the words, more awareness in the way boundaries are held. There is no need to prove love by suffering for it, no need to confuse confusion with mystery, no need to perform for acceptance. It is not perfect, and it does not pretend to be perfect, but it is conscious. It is steady. It feels like meeting a familiar truth again, only now with maturity behind it. And yet, even here, one of the hardest truths remains. Sometimes people who deeply changed each other still do not return to each other in lasting form. That does not mean the connection was false. It does not mean it was imagined. It does not mean the story was wasted. Some connections are real precisely because they transform you, whether or not they become permanent. That is a difficult truth, but it is also a sacred one. Not all meaningful bonds are designed to remain forever. Some are meant to come in, awaken your inner world, and leave after their work is done. and that work can echo through the rest of your life. There are connections that break old family patterns inside you. They expose where love was confused with sacrifice, where attachment was confused with safety, where silence was mistaken for peace. These relationships bring hidden pain to the surface, so it can finally be healed instead of passed down again. There are connections that teach you self-love when you have spent years neglecting yourself. Through them, you see where you shrink, where you settle, where you betray your own needs just to keep someone close. They show you that love should never cost you your dignity, your voice, or your inner stability. There are also connections that awaken emotional depth. They make you feel things you had gone numb to. They remind you that you are still capable of tenderness, vulnerability, devotion, and truth. Even if they leave, they can leave you more open, more honest, and more alive than before. And then, there are the connections that redirect your whole life path. Meeting them changes your standards, your choices, your direction, your values. They were never meant to stay exactly as they appeared in the beginning. Their role was to prepare you for what comes next. That does not make them less important. It makes them sacred in a different way. Sacred does not always mean permanent. Sometimes it means unforgettable because of what it awakened in you. So when people ask why destiny feels harsh before it feels gentle, the answer is simple. Life is not always protecting your comfort. It is protecting your potential. It will let your heart break before it lets your soul go back to sleep. And in the moment, that can feel cruel. But later, with time, you may see that what felt like rejection was actually redirection. What felt like loss was making room for alignment. There is one truth that appears again and again in these connections. And if you remember nothing else, remember this. When two people are deeply meant to meet in a meaningful way, they are often required to grow apart before they can grow together. And sometimes the growing apart is the whole purpose. That season is not punishment. It is refinement. It is a sacred interval where illusions fall, wounds rise, patterns reveal themselves, and each person is slowly shaped into someone more honest, more grounded, and more capable of real love. Here, you learn boundaries, not as walls, but as protection for your energy and self-respect. Here, you learn that being chosen by someone else means very little if you have not chosen yourself first. Here, you learn how to love deeply without disappearing inside another person. Here, you learn that longing is not always a sign to chase. Sometimes it is a signal to listen, heal, and become. Only after this inner work begins does life show what comes next. Maybe it leads to reunion. Maybe it leads to a new path. Maybe it leads to a love that matches the person you have become. But no one comes out the same. The old self begins to fade. A clearer self rises. So if you are thinking of someone now, let this settle inside you. You do not need to force anything. You do not need to shrink yourself to be loved. What is real will never demand that you betray your own truth to keep it alive. Real alignment does not live in constant anxiety. It asks for honesty, courage, patience, and growth. That is all. And if that person never returns, do not call the connection a failure. Do not measure meaning only by permanence. Some people are teachers in human form. They arrive at the exact moment you are ready to be changed, or at the exact moment life decides it is time to make you ready. They disturb your old comfort so your blind spots can finally be seen. They challenge beliefs that were too small for the life you are meant to live. They may leave pain behind, yes, but they also leave clarity, depth, and a stronger relationship with yourself. Nothing is wasted. Not the tears, not the longing, not the confusion, not the silence, not even the disappointment. Every part of it can become wisdom if you let it. What feels like an ending may be the doorway to a truer life. What feels like being left may be the moment you finally return to yourself. So do not chase what is trying to teach you stillness. Do not force what is trying to teach you trust. And do not think your worth depends on who stays. Your worth was never on trial. The lesson was always deeper than that. The deepest connections do not come to help you possess someone. They come to help you transform. They ask you to become more whole, more aware, more loving, more honest. And in time, whether through reunion or release, you begin to understand the quiet truth beneath it all. What is truly meant for you will not require you to abandon yourself in order to receive it. It will ask you to grow. It will ask you to be brave. It will ask you to meet yourself fully. And once you do, you will never love the same way again. If this spoke to something real inside you, hold on to that feeling, because sometimes the heart recognizes the truth before the mind has words for it.